do I believe what? And that's a very logical thing to ask, because what you believe underlies what you do, and your actions have consequences. So to a very large extent, what happens to you is related to what you believe. Sometimes there is a very linear relationship. For instance, you believe vaccines are not necessary, so you don't vaccinate your kid, and your kid gets sick. Sometimes the relationship is not so clear, but still your beliefs are the frame through which you experience the world. Everything that happens to you makes sense to the extent that it fits with your beliefs. So this is a very important issue. But you could also ask me, not what do I believe, but why do I believe? And this is a very important question too, and I think it's a more difficult one to answer, because we don't pay much attention to it. But why we accept some beliefs and reject other beliefs is the gatekeeper that forms that body of beliefs that will help us make sense of the world. Today, I want to talk to you about how we form beliefs in relationship to science, what happens when this gatekeeping system goes wrong and we accept beliefs that are false or reject beliefs that are true, and why this is important. I wish I could finish this talk with some nice and easy instructions about how to keep this system working perfectly well, but I'm afraid that the best that I can do is to give you a couple of ideas for you to think about. So let's start. Belief is based on trust. You trust some people, you trust some organizations, and you believe what they say. If you think of it, most of what you believe about science, you have acquired that way, right? Of course, I'm aware that this is a university, right? So a few of you in the audience will believe things that you have discovered yourselves. In that case, congratulations. But still, this is a small part of all the things that you believe about science. Right? So trust makes us believe. And we counterbalance trust with skepticism. Skepticism is a temporary suspension of belief, and it makes us doubt. And sometimes it makes us doubt to the point that we abandon some belief altogether. And in science, this happens all the time. We used to believe that gastric ulcers were caused by stress, but evidence made us abandon that belief and believe that most gastric ulcers are caused by a bacterial infection. So this happens all the time in science, and it is no big deal. Right? So we combine trust and skepticism, and that is how we more or less form and abandon beliefs. But skepticism is not the same for everybody everywhere. There are different degrees of sophistication of skepticism. Professional scientists who are doing research in some particular field of expertise and who are experts in that field use what Robert K. Merton called organized skepticism. And this means that they apply the practical and theoretical tools of science to the solution of some scientific problem. And this is, I'm sure that some of you will be doing science actively, and you know that this is a highly technical process. And only a few people can do it for any particular field of expertise. So most of us, most of the time, are not experts, and we cannot use organized skepticism because we don't know what are the right questions. Maybe it happened to you, I'm sure, and certainly it happened to me, to attend a seminar on something that is very interesting, but I'm not an expert, say gene editing using CRISPR, right? So at the end of the seminar, you have some concerns you want to ask, and you raise your hand and you ask, oh, are you going to use gene editing to extend longevity? Well, that's an interesting question, but it's a broad question. It's not a highly technical question. If you're an expert in the field, you will ask about this mutation in this gene having an effect on this cellular pathway, extending the lifespan of this organism. So in reality, these are like two different kinds of conversations. The expert conversation and the layman conversation, which is all of us most of the time. So for most of the things that worry us, we have to resort to the experts when we are concerned about something. We have to ask the experts. So I don't know if you read the news this morning. There's this new therapy for colon cancer. So, of course, I believe it. I congratulate the researchers. I'm happy for them, wish them all the best in their clinical trials. I take this belief and put it away somewhere. Of course, it's open to revision, so we'll see what happens. But today, I believe it. I'm fine with that. This system sometimes goes wrong, and it goes wrong when you don't have trust in the experts. Then this equilibrium goes all the way, and skepticism becomes an absolute position. So when you don't trust the experts, things still happen to you, and you still have to explain the things that happen to you. But if you don't believe the explanations that the experts provide, you will make up your own, or you will believe something that somebody else tells you. And this leads very easily to conspiratory thinking. Because, of course, you know that the experts know the truth, but they're not telling. They are hiding the truth, and they're telling some story that nobody wants to believe. So this I think this is a problem, actually. And I would like to tell you why. I think there are 3 types of conspiracy theories that involve science one way or another. This is not a formal academic classification. It's just a way of highlighting some items that I find interesting for discussion, so please bear me out. For instance, we have chemtrails, right? Some people believe that certain type of clouds in the sky are some poison that the bad guys are dropping on us. If any of us has any doubt about something that they see in the sky, we could call some meteorological institution, and they will be happy to answer our questions and will tell us exactly what these clouds are. But if you don't trust the expert, you will not call them. And instead, you will believe something that somebody sent you on the internet or by Facebook or whatever. So people who believe in chemtrails, they still believe that clouds are made of water. It's just not those particular type of clouds. So basically what they do is that they ignore the explanation provided by science. Other conspiracy theories are using bad science. And for instance, this would be the opposition to golden rice by some pressure groups. Probably you heard about golden rice. It's been around for some 20 years. This is a variety of rice that's been genetically modified to improve the intake of vitamin A and prevent blindness in children living in countries where they don't have easy access to other foodstuffs that would give them vitamin A. This is a project that has been developed mostly in the public sector. It's given for free for humanitarian purposes. So any way you want to look at this, it is a good project from the science point of view, from the society point of view. But some people oppose it because it's GM, right? It's genetically modified food. And they see some dark motives behind it. There's a conspiracy behind it. And because they cannot fight what is apparent, they use bad science. By bad science, I mean incomplete experiments, cherry picking of data, all these tricks that people use to deceive ourselves and to deceive others, and that are also present in regular science. From time to time, we see examples, and we could talk about it, of bad science going on in laboratories. Here, bad science is used to support a conspiracy theory. A third kind of conspiracy theories involve pseudoscience. So pseudoscience is something that looks like science, but it is not science. Mostly because it refuses to put their beliefs to the test, and it refuses to give up their beliefs when the evidence shows that they are false. So something that is a commonplace in labs all over the world, that you have some belief, you do some experiments, and then you are forced to abandon that belief because the experiments tell you so. When we're dealing with pseudoscience, this doesn't happen, right? And in particular, pseudomedicine. There are several belief systems that you know probably, homeopathy and acupuncture and Reiki and aromatherapy, and a very long list of belief systems that try to explain disease and health and the body using some beliefs that are contradictory with all the other beliefs that we have based on chemistry and biology and physics. When you have two beliefs that are contradictory, you have to put them to the test and abandon one of them. That's what we do every day in the lab. But if you refuse to put these beliefs to the test, then you are abandoning science altogether. And at the same time, this generates a conspiracy thinking medical conspiracy that they don't want you to use this medical practice that is so safe and effective. And also pharma conspiracy. The pharma companies don't want to develop drugs for this or that disease because they want you to die. They don't want to cure you. So this is a conspiracy thinking that goes linked with pseudoscience. This is a very quick overview of things that go wrong when people form beliefs about the world that are not based on science. And I think this is a problem. If this was just people wearing tinfoil hats to protect themselves against Wi-Fi radiation and posting pictures of clouds on Instagram, I wouldn't waste 1 minute on it. But this is more serious than that, a lot more serious than that. There are people in positions of power who believe that climate change is a hoax. And based on that belief, they put in place actions that will have very serious consequences for all of us. There are celebrities and influencers and people with plenty of followers who are campaigning against vaccination or are promoting pseudo-medicines. And that has very serious consequences that we can see all around us daily. Some food and health gurus that profit from the vulnerability of people when they are sick. We see this all the time. I have to confess that I am a pessimist, and I believe that science conspiracies will be with us forever. But I also believe that we have to try to reduce the damage that they cause. So we have to engage. But how do we engage? And anyway, who are we? We refers to scientists, people at the edge of knowledge, generating new beliefs, but also to people who are not scientists, but who can, they can have legitimate concerns about science and technology, but they appreciate the role of critical thinking, and they appreciate the fact that if you're not prepared to accept evidence contrary to your beliefs, then there is no limit to what you believe. You will believe anything. But we are also journalists who are the gatekeepers that give presence and credibility to conspiracy theories. And most of all, teachers at all levels, because critical thinking is something that needs to be nurtured and developed through all the stages of life. But how do we engage? I think there is something that we can learn from conspiracy theories in science. And it is because they are based on fear. And that shows us what people are afraid of. Okay? I'm not aware of any conspiracy theory that involves exoplanets or junk DNA. And it doesn't surprise me because I've never met anyone who was afraid of exoplanets or junk DNA. But I've met plenty of people who were afraid of gene manipulation or not having a medicine when they need it or not having clean water. Even people who are afraid of becoming poorer because of some environmental regulation to reduce CO2 emissions. So these are fears that we cannot dismiss, even if they're not based on scientific evidence. I told you that I would finish by giving you a couple of ideas. And so, well, here is one. We cannot underestimate the importance of emotions when we form beliefs. Science conspiracies are based on fear. And fear disrupts the equilibrium between trust and skepticism and takes it all the way to one extreme. So we can try to bring that extreme skepticism to a point where it is a manageable skepticism. And for that, you cannot use data. Somebody who's afraid of gene manipulation will never be reassured no matter how much experimental evidence you put in front of them. So you have to use emotions, not rational arguments. I wish I knew how to do that, so I leave it to you. And the second idea is that conspiracy theories in science put a spotlight on where we have failed, where we can do a better job. There is a lot to improve in communication, but not just communication of results, communication of motives communication of means, methods. There is also a lot to improve in how we prioritize research projects, why we want to promote this line of research and not that line of research. And linked to that also, we have a lot to improve in terms of transparency. We know that we work well, but we have to make sure that everybody knows that we work well. Sometimes we give it for granted. And also, and central to everything, of course, is education. Critical thinking is not just something for scientists. Critical thinking is at the core of the gatekeeping system that allows every one of us to believe things that are at least temporarily true.